2014 was a year of highs. As early as in February, hopes emerged with the election surveys, and after the May election results, business sentiment scaled unprecedented highs. As a new government took charge, the first government in 30 years where the ruling party has a simple majority in parliament. The high hopes of reform remained just that for nearly 6 months. But in the last month of 2014, there came a flurry of activity. Sectors like defence, insurance, medical equipment and others have been opened up for more FDI. Land acquisition rules have been eased through an ordinance. The first steps have been taken to allow commercial mining of coal. And finally, there is some forward movement on the goods and services tax. So, finally, is the government's Make in India pitch coming good? So to take stock of the year that was and the prospects of the new year, joining me are two men who will be at the forefront of the Make in India campaign, or two companies that have been at the forefront of the Make in India campaign. I have with me Koushik Chaterjee, the Group Executive Director of Finance at Tata Steel, and Shankar Raman, the CFO and whole-time Director at Larsen & Toubro. Gentlemen, welcome. Thank you very much for joining me on this very special show that stands at the cusp of a great year of achievements and a great year of hope. Let me start with you, Koushik. Well, I quickly ran down the acts and ordinances that are already in place, FDI in several sectors like insurance and defence, as well the Land Act amendments now coming through an ordinance. I wanted to ask you, the Mines and Minerals ordinance is in the works, but we are told that it will be an ordinance probably in 5 or 10 days. Do you think at least some part of your problems are resolved in terms of mining likely to get started?
Well, Latha, I think if you just wind back to where you started, in terms of, post the election, the government coming in with a strong political mandate, and certainly the willingness to make things happen. It's actually, and I think in the Make in India campaign workshop a few days back, the Prime Minister himself said that it is in a form of a change management process, and whether it is at the policy level, whether it is at the administrative level or the bureaucratic level. So these are manifestation of the willingness to make things happen. There are many complex issues in many of these legislations. It's not a kind of a straight-on things. It's also important, I must say, that legislations have to be done carefully with due consultation with all stakeholders, and because legislations are permanent documents and the permanent frameworks on which investors do come in. This government has recognized that legislation has to be predictable, has to be stable, and so on. So I think it's certainly the direction of these kind of things were on the table. If you look at it, the Land Act is being changed very quickly because it's been realized that you cannot possibly implement the act, which is a very new act from what was there several decades back. So it is also important to be careful and mindful about what legislations are being put into place. It's not that every new legislation is the right legislation to do. So it is important that all stakeholders are consulted and done in a manner that it remains a stable, robust form of legislations for some time to come in the future, and it can be implemented and it does good for the country. Okay,
no, Koushik, let me read the subtext of what you are saying, and something that I have heard from a lot of India Inc. heavyweights, that actions and acts of the government of 20 years vintage have been challenged by the courts, and now all that we have got is an ordinance which is still not law. Are you saying that the road travelled so far in the form of ordinances and in the form of some actions in terms of FDI is not quite going to give people the confidence to invest? We would rather see a full-fledged law.
Yeah, I think, if I look at it, If you look at the purist will tell you that the ordinances are enactment during emergency or during a crisis. Because in the next parliament it has to get ratified, it has to get discussed and so on. So if you look at the number of stakeholders that have emerged today in general in India, is the central government which sets the policy, the parliament, you have the state governments which implements policy, then you have the judiciary and the activism around the judiciary that has come in, and then you have the citizens, corporates, etc. So you need to understand that ordinance is still in that form temporary, because it needs to get past one very important stakeholder, which is the parliament. And therefore, if it doesn't happen in that manner, there are certain states like Bihar, I'm told, which in 20 years back used to only come up with ordinance because the assembly never used to work. This is the folklore. But you don't want that kind of thing. You need to have permanent set of regulations which actually passes through full consultation and ensures that it is robust enough. So as an investor, inside or outside, there is an element of uncertainty on ordinances, let's face it. So it does not become a permanent law till it passes to the parliament.
Okay, one more question to you on this, and then I want to get Shankar on this. Koushik, there were quite a few people from the mines and metals industry, your sector, who were telling us that, invariably their leases have not been renewed by the state governments on time. They are, told to mine even after the leasing period is over, and then they are in violation of the law, and then they are imposed penalties. They say even after the court gives them permission and the center gives them permission, state governments have not given them either prospecting licenses or converted prospecting license into final licenses. The new MMDR ordinance gives the center the power to set time limits to the state, and if the state doesn't renew, it is considered renewed anyways. Will that untie some of the knots, or do you think that will also remain tentative?
No, so we really don't know what is finally going into the document, into the cabinet. But this is actually what we are measuring is the effect. The causality or the cause of this is somewhere else, which is actually the alignment of the center and states, the alignment of the bureaucracy to do things which are in the right context, which is why I talked about the change management process that the Prime Minister is trying to push. Because all of this, if it gets aligned, then you will see the behaviors change. Then you will find that the state governments get into the right alignment. Then the bureaucracy, whether it's the state, center, right down into the departments, etc., they're all aligned into saying what is necessary, what's the accountability that I have, and what I am supposed to actually approve or not approve, etc. So this is important. So this doesn't come by a piece of legislation, because in the piece of legislation you will certainly find some scope space for somebody to actually block or not do things. So I think it's a larger issue of enhancing the cause of what we want to do for the country.
Fair point. Now to get you into this conversation, Shankar, there are a couple of things that an industry like yours or a company like yours should find advantages. 51% of FDI allowed in defense, more private sector investment in defense. Is that at least directly meaning more orders for you and others of your ilk?
Actually, well begun is half done. A lot needs to be done. I wish things are so simple that based on certain percentage shareholding, flow of technology and capability to manufacture sophisticated pieces of equipment would emerge. According to me, what we have gained in the last 6 months essentially has been A, political advantage, and B, a lot of qualitative improvements in the scenario. And that's why the sentiments have run away the way it has. Today there is growth orientation very clearly in the minds of government, and the ordinances that we are talking about in terms of relaxing some of the tough legislations into more pliable ones and improving the flow of capital, and on the back of it technology, all of that are good enablers. But according to me, I think we've just showed the way. The path needs to be walked. It is keeping the stakeholders engaged and interested, But we are still, at least in my opinion, a year and a half away before we see on the ground effect and quantitative benefits of all these good intentions.
Shankar, what about the Land Act itself? It allows you to dispense with time-consuming things like taking consent and doing social impact assessment for industrial corridors, for land, for PPP projects where government is the dominant shareholder or landowner. Does this mean that order flow will be a little quicker for you in 2015?
I think very clearly there is a big step forward. There is a lot of time saving that is likely to accrue to the people who are interested in acquiring land because of these developments. But it still remains to be seen as to how efficient the end-to-end process is, because when you talk about enclosed acreages, and you talk about setting up a manufacturing unit, you're talking about 100 acres, 500 acres, then that's one kind of situation. When you're talking about 500 kilometers and 800 kilometer stretches, and where in our country particularly there is enormous scope for public interest litigation, especially when it comes to very touchy subjects of religious structures, utility shifting, etc. We need to wait and watch as to how those things are dealt with. But very definitely, as compared to last week, the situation on the ground this week is better by these concessions that have been recognized and handed over.
Okay, well, so the takeaway from my guess is that the path has been shown, it has yet to be walked. Ordinance have been passed, but mindsets need to change at all levels of bureaucracy, centre, states, judiciary, local bodies. That has perhaps not been done, so it's just a good beginning. Actual changes may take as much as 6 quarters to be seen on the ground. We take a break. On that note, we come back and ask our guests what are the 2 or 3 things they want done on a priority basis in 2015. In a minute.